Humans need energy to move, to grow, and to evolve. We believe the energy that drives the transformation is positive energy. And positive energy comes from a reliable source. Pertamina has distributed energy that drives and empowers Indonesia. We are committed to continue to providing and supplying energy from its source to the nation's remote areas and the world. For 6 decades, Pertamina has evolved and is continuing to grow with Indonesia, innovating relentlessly in producing energy with the spirit of continuous transformation into a world-class national company. Since June of 2020, Pertamina has transformed into Oil and Gas Holdings state-owned enterprise. With 6 sub-holdings, Pertamina holds a strategic part of maintaining the national energy resilience. And we are Pertamina Hulu Energy, the sub-holding upstream that performs the Pertamina's upstream management. In the sub-holding upstream, not only do we produce oil and gas energy, we also continue to innovate, to discover new oil and gas reserves, to explore new fields, exploits, and produce oil and gas from all of our working areas. Not only expanding from the northern part of Sumatra to Papua, but also internationally. Divided into 5 regions and 2 service companies, we maintain the energy source to keep streaming to attain the national energy resilience. El-Nusa and PDSI, as the upstream services companies, contributes and synergizes harmoniously with all Pertamina's subholding upstream regions to embody Pertamina's aspiration to be the leading global energy company. In accomplishing the vision, mission, and aspirations of Pertamina, we implement Akhlaq values in line with every operation and business activity. We believe the culture of Akhlaq values shape our employees to excel, to be professionals, reliable, and experts in their fields that support a continuous business growth. In the subholding upstream, we believe that creativity and innovation are keys to keep growing, to initiate solutions and added value for the company through synergy to achieve common goals and the operational excellence. We believe by working safely, creating a healthy, safe, and friendly working environment are the main keys, because we care for the health, the work safety, and security of every employee as our main priority and commitment. We uphold this commitment without tolerance. 0 work accidents in our entire operation activity is a must. In subholding upstream, we believe that a strong HSSE performance and culture will accelerate continuous business growth and benefit for all employees and stakeholders, as well as to live harmoniously and balanced with the environment surrounding our operational area. We are always committed to protect the environment's sustainability by managing the utilization of energy and other resources to minimize the environmental impact, as well as to preserve the ecosystem and biodiversity in every business and operation activity. In subholding upstream, supporting business sustainability, we provide the best contribution to the community through the implementation of corporate social responsibility programs, empowering communities to live healthy, intelligent, and independent lives, as well as preserving sustainable green environments to create prosperous communities with our CSR and environmental development programs. Our programs support the Sustainable Development Goals in a form of environmental, social, and governance, or ESG-based program implementation. We believe with continuous development of corporate social responsibility and environmental programs, we will provide positive energy for the community.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome all participants today for the 2022 Yanmi International Virtual Conference. Right now, we are in the focus group discussion number 4. Before we start the meeting, I would like to introduce the FGD committee and also our moderator for today's discussion. Okay, my name is Erwin Saputra. Maybe we go to the next slide, Pak Axel.
Sorry, operator. The slide, please. The latest slide, please. Slide terakhir yang dikirimkan operator. Mohon. Ya, operator, mohon dikesayakan dulu ya slide-nya. Ya.
Okay, I will continue. My name is Erwin Saputra. I'm FGD chairman for today's discussions. I received my bachelor degree from Institute Teknologi Bandung, and master and PhD from New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, all in petroleum engineering. And I continue my 2 postdoc. One is in the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, and the other one in Texas A&M University. My professional background, I was the faculty member in ITB from 93 to 2005. Then continue to Kinder Morgan CO2 company from 2005 to 2014. And joined Occidental Oil and Gas Company from 2014 to 2019. And then I established 2 consulting companies, Enoproco and Epitex, from 2016 to 2020. And right now I joined with Pertamina as a principal expert upstream. Next slide, please. And the FGD secretary today is Pak Dodi Mionri. Unfortunately, he is not available for coming today. He is out of the country. Pak Dodi received his bachelor degree from ITB and master degree from the University of Aberdeen, all in petroleum engineering. His professional experience, he worked for SKK Migas from 2012 until now. Our FGD liaison officer, Pak Axel Perwiro Indro, received his bachelor degree from ITB in petroleum engineering. And right now he works for Rock Flow Dynamics. Next, please. And next, our moderator, is Bu Debbie Halinda. She received her bachelor degree in University Gajah Mada and master degree from ITB. Her experience, he worked for Aliburton Energy Services from 2005 to 2011, and then worked for FICO Indonesia from 2011 to 2018. Right now, he works for Pertamina in the production and research URTI, technology innovation, from 2018 until now. Okay, we can start again. I would like to welcome FGD committee, moderator, guest speaker, and support team. Pak Dodi Milondri from SKK Migas, Pak Axel Perwiro Indro from Romplo Dynamics, Bu Debbie Halinda from URTI, Pak Juniarto M. Palilu from ESDM, Pak Kunti Tan from McKinsey, Pak Oki Muraja from Pertamina, and Pak Martin Afdal from Restart Energy. The theme of discussion today is the decarbonization roadmaps in oil and gas in Indonesia. As you notice, we have experts from across the field, from the government of Indonesia, from the international consultant, and also from the oil company. They will be sharing their thoughts, their knowledge, and their opinions with the rest of us. Talking about the decarbonization, government of Indonesia has a commitment to achieve net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. To achieve this objective, all the oil and gas industry and also other industry take any possible effort to reduce and mitigate the carbon emitting to the atmosphere to keep climate change under control. Regulation permit support from the government and stakeholder collaboration will be a key success to deploy and realize this commitment. All this effort will be discussed in this meeting today. Once again, I, on behalf of IATMI, I would like to express my appreciation to the speaker who generously share their knowledge and experience for this event. Surely their talk will broaden our horizon in this topic. Also, I would like to thank and acknowledge all the support team who have worked hard to make this event a truly successful one. I wish everyone a successful and fruitful discussion. Before we start, I would like to continue to Bu Debbie. I let Bu Debbie to take control. Thank you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Erwin Syah, for the introductions for our committee. Pak Erwin Syah is our FGD chairman, actually. He's the expert, for sure. He's one of the decarbonizations that having a worldwide experience. And now, as we knew that our FGD sharing sessions that we will start today, my name is Debbie Halinda, as previously been introduced by Pak Erwin Syah, that will guide this FGD session. Specifically, this FGD sessions will be the FGD4 that will discuss about the decarbonization roadmap in oil and gas. As been previously mentioned by Pak Erwin Syah, that we have the complete team for the discussions for today. And we have from our regulator, from our government, and also from our consultant perspective, and also from our technical and operational perspective as well. We have Pak Martin from Ristat, and also we have the Pertamina point of view as the one of the oil and gas, national oil and gas company by PAUKI. And so we knew that all of our attendees here, thank you for all your coming today, and must be very passionate and impatient. So I would like to start this one with some rules that we have for our FGD sessions this afternoon. So the meeting rules will be for all the attendees. Kindly please to mute your microphone. And then we want to ensure that most of the materials in here probably is a bit confidentiality agreement would be subject to prohibit to screen capture or record. And then please to respect the copyright of the all materials that have been presented by our speakers. And also we have good news actually from our committee, from the YATMI FGD sessions, that questions from all the attendees, we will pick one of the best questions for today's in FGD4. So please feel free, and we encourage you to ask the questions in the chat box. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce each one by one of our speakers for today. We have 4 speakers for today that will share their knowledge, and where we is going to have discussions, like constructive discussions. We will have so many questions, I hope, that we're having in the Q&A. So we have 4 of our speakers over here that I'd like to express my gratitude for all your coming over here. We will have our first speaker here is Mr. Juniarto M. Palilu from the Oil and Gas Inspector at ESDM. So and also this our first speaker, Pak Juniarto M. Palilu, if I may to put some introductions for his curriculum vitae, would be start from Pak Juni Educations from petroleum engineering, both of the bachelor degree and master degree is coming from the Institut Teknologi Bandung, majorly in petroleum engineering. And then Pak Juniarto then continuing the doctoral degree in material science from the University Indonesia or Universitas Indonesia. So then after that, Pak Juniarto starting his experience start from 2006 until now with various positions. So ESDM will be Indonesian Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So Pak Juniarto starting from the oil and gas supporting service analyst in 2006. And then 2015 until now, I think it's until 2022 for oil and gas inspector, becoming oil and gas inspector. And then up until today, Pak Juniarto is becoming the sub-coordinator of oil and gas technical affairs. So we will hear from Pak Juniarto very soon as our first speaker. And before that, I'd like to continue to have an introduction to our second speaker here. So our second speaker here is from the point of view of a consultant's perspective. We have Pak Konti Tan. Pak Konti Tan is a senior partner at McKinsey Company. So Pak Konti is having his bachelor degree majorly in mechanical engineering from MIT or Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then he was taking his master degree still at the same major in mechanical engineering, coming from the University of Cambridge. So then Pak Conti now is the senior partner in McKinsey company. He's joining the McKinsey starting from 2012 until now, and then before that he's he lead positions in several downstream petroleum companies. And at the early stage of his career, he's also a scholar in a Shell Malaysia. So we also will be here very soon from Pak Conti from the perspective of the consultancy and how the decarbonizations point of view from Pak Conti presentations later on. So after that, I'd like to continue to our third speaker. Our third speaker is from the technical and operational perspective. Specifically in Restart Energy today, we have Pak Martin Obdal. Pak Martin Obdal is a partner at Restart Energy. So start from the background of Pak Martin. Pak Martin he's taking his master degree in majorly in industrial economics and technology management from Norwegian University of Science and Technology, or NTNU. If you are familiar with the, I strongly sure that all of us here probably very familiar with the NTNU. So for the experience that Pak Martin's career, at the very beginning, Pak Martin is joining as a consultant in project manager, principal, and mainly in the energy transitions and carbon markets in Restart Energy. Pak Martin is joining as consultant starting from 2014 until 2022. And then this year, Pak Martin is becoming already a partner, as a partner in Restart Energy in 2022 until now. Like we must have a very impatience to hear how from technical and operational consultant perspective about this decarbonizations roadmap, specifically in Indonesia, and probably our speakers would have some sharing their knowledge from a worldwide perspective. So I would like to move to our fourth speaker, last but not least for sure. We are having our fourth speaker, Bapak Oki Muraza, as a Senior Vice President in the Research and Technology Innovations, PT Pertamina Persero. So Pak Oki will give us a lot of insight or a lot of what have been Pertamina as a national oil company been participating in this decarbonizations roadmap. So I would like also to introduce and start for Pak Oki educations. All Pak Oki educations starting from bachelor degree, master degree, and doctoral degree, all majorly in chemical engineering. Pak Oki starting his bachelor degree in Institut Teknologi Bandung, and then continuing his master degree in Delft in Netherlands, and then Pak Oki is taking his doctoral degree also I think in European, but is in Eindhoven. So Pak Oki experience starting in 2016 as an associate professor in King Fahd, University of Petroleum and Minerals, in 2016 until 2021. And after that, we are gladly and lucky for having Pak Oki back to Indonesia actually, as the Senior Vice President in RTI, or Research, Technology and Innovations in PT Pertamina Persero. So that's our speakers for today. I knew that all the attendees here would like to hear very soon and very passionate and impatient to hear from our speakers. So without any further delay, and again, I would like to emphasize for having all the questions be put in the chat box, and we will pick and select the questions to be asked to our speakers. So without any further delay, I would like to give our first presentations to the first speakers is going to be Pak Juniarto. Pak Juniarto, the floor is yours. Thank you, Pak Juniarto.
Okay, thank you, Bu Dewi. Okay, good afternoon. Within this session, I will try to deliver the perspective of the regulator regarding decarbonization roadmaps in oil and gas. And for that, we will share information as follows. Next slide, please. If we look at the chart at the left side, we can see that the trend of the Indonesia greenhouse emission profile tend to increase, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. And if we look at the pie chart at the right side, we can see that energy sector contribute about 34% of greenhouse gas emission. This is the data taken from year 2019. Next slide, please. And greenhouse gas emission in energy sector, we can see here that came from various sources. In this slide, I will emphasize the greenhouse gas emission from oil and gas activities comes from fugitive oil and gas upstream, about 2.8%, and from the refinery, about 2.42%, totally about 5% of all. Next slide, please. Indonesia have a commitment to greenhouse gas reduction. If we look at the left side, energy mix still dominated by fossil energy, with new and renewable energy utilization is only about 11.7%, and we have a few president's directive that have been announced in international forum, like in UNFCCC, Leaders Summit on Climate, COP26, and now we become the presidency of G20, which focus on 3 main pillars: global health inclusive, digital-based global economic transformation, sustainable energy and sustainable energy transition. We have also national determined commitment or NDC target and realization. We can see here in energy sector, we will reduce the greenhouse gas emission by year 2030 about 314 gigaton in CM1 scheme and 446 gigaton with CM2 scheme. We can see mitigation realization from the last 3 years, from 2019 until 2021, is above the target. Next slide, please. About energy transition roadmap towards net zero emission, we can see from year 2021 until 2060, we have a timeline for strategic achievement towards net zero emission of energy sector. We can see that from this beginning year forward, we try to emphasize on supply side, like rooftop solar PV, and substitute the coal-fired power plant with new and renewable power plant, etc. And towards 2060, we will emphasize at the demand side, like utilization of electric stove, electric vehicle, city gas for houses, fuel gas for cars, and the implementation of energy management. Next slide, please. In the energy transition, we can see here the role of oil and gas as the main energy in the transportation sector, and natural gas is used as energy transition before 100% of NRE power plant applied. Natural gas is used also as fuel for intermittent renewable energy and fulfillment of domestic need. The issues in oil and gas in energy transition is the increase in oil production by 1 million barrel oil per day and natural gas by 12 BSCFD by 2030. And the second is the produce of carbon emission. We have also utilization strategy of oil and gas by increasing the reserve through optimization of existing field production, transformation of resource to production, accelerate chemical EOR, and massive exploration for big discovery. We also put natural gas as energy transition before 100% of new and renewable energy power plant applied. And the last one is the application of CCS and CCUS. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the projection of the emission that comes from oil and gas, upstream and downstream. The peak of emission is 2030, is due to incremental of production, and the emission reduction after 2030 is caused by natural decline. On the downstream side, there is no increase in refinery and distribution of fuel. Then emission by 2060 is projected to be 14.98 million ton CO2 equivalent. And it needs more initiative to achieve net zero emission. Next slide, please. This is the emission reduction initiative that come from supply side and demand side. From supply side, we have CCS, CCUS, and flaring reduction program. And from demand side, we have fuel switching, city gas, and gas fuel for transportation. Next slide, please. CCUS. Next. We have here the CO2 storage capacity for CCS or CCUS that totally potential capacity in depleted oil and gas reservoir is about 2.09 gigatons of CO2, and the storage potential of saline aquifer about 9.68 gigatons of CO2. The location is scattered in Sumatra Island, Java Island, Kalimantan Island, and Papua. We can see also at Natuna Sea and North Java Sea. Next slide, please. We have some projects in Indonesia regarding CCS and CCUS, and mostly the status is in the study phase, and we have some potential from about 10 million tons CO2 per year until about 30 million tons CO2 for 10 years. Next slide, please. We are now working on drafting ministerial regulation on CCS and CCUS. The ministerial regulation will focus on CCS or CCUS in oil and gas working area. And the site specific will be based on the reference standard and good engineering practice. The regulation will cover the planning and operation and closure of the CCS and CCUS operation, monitoring and MRV, and the economic aspect, the emergency response, and other provision. Next slide, please. The draft of ministerial regulation also regulate the scheme of CCS and CCUS approval, which oil and gas contractor can submit proposal as part of plan of development 1 or plan of development 1 amendment, or next plan of development. In case of the proposal is as part of plan of the development 1, the proposal can submit to SK Kamigas or BPMA for Aceh, then will be evaluated the plan of development 1 or plan of development 1 amendment and submit consideration to the minister, and the minister will approve the plan of development 1 or plan of development 1 amendment. In case of the plan of development is the next plan of development, the oil and gas contractor can submit the proposal to SK Kemigas or BPMA for the approval. After the plan of development approval, the contractor shall perform the activity procedure for CCS or CCUS in accordance with the laws and regulation. If needed, the contractor via SK Kamigas or BPMA could also propose amendment of the production sharing contract. Next slide, please. This is the potential collaboration on CCS and CCUS. The collaboration can be conventional 1-by-1 CCUS when the source can transfer directly to the CO2 sink through pipeline, or the collaboration can be in a way of hub clustering of regional CO2 management. Next slide, please. We also have a flaring program, and the background of the flaring reduction program. We have national determined contribution or NDC. Indonesia has committed to reduce unconditionally 29% and conditional reduction target up to 41% of its greenhouse gases emission against the business as usual scenario by the year of 2030. And the second, the target of zero routine flaring in 2030. We have endorsed the zero routine flaring by 2030 initiative. And the third is the net zero emission plan, where Indonesia has set its goal for achieving net zero emission by 2060 or sooner, so that emissions in oil and gas business activities need to be mitigated. Next slide, please. This is the roadmap of zero routine flaring from 2020 until 2030. In 2020, we identification and coordination, and in 2021, we do regulatory strengthening, and in 2022, we do baseline setting, and in 2023, we have routine flaring mapping. In 2024, we do clustering of routine flaring, and in 2005, we do supervision, monitoring, and evaluation. And in 2030, we can have zero routine flaring. Next slide, please. We have some regulation here regarding to flaring. We have presidential decree number 61 in year 2011. We have Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource Regulation number 17 in 2021, and we also have Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource Regulation number 30 in 2021. Regarding venting and fugitive, we have Ministry of Environment and Forestry Ministerial Regulation number 13 in 2009. We have also the prohibition does not apply to venting gas from gas casing, production storage tank, gas-driven pneumatic device, gas-driven injection pump, etc. We have also regulation regarding greenhouse gas from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource number 22 in year 2019. Next slide, please. This is the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource Regulation number 17 into and enacted in 2021 regarding implementation of gas flare management in oil and gas activities. The scope is the definition of gas flare activity and the scope of flaring gas management activities. Also cooperation between business entities in utilization or management of gas flare, the limitation of gas flare volume, reporting and supervision, and reward and punishment. And the last one is the transition period. Next slide, please. This is our data against flaring and flare gas utilization. We can see here from year 2080 until now, the flare gas utilization is always higher than the flaring gas. Next slide, please.
1 minute remaining, Pak.
Okay, thank you. This is the flaring profile from upstream oil and gas in semester 2, 2021. We have routine flaring, safety, non-routine emergency, impurities, etc. What we can reduce, it's come from routine flaring, since the another source of flaring is quite inevitable to reduce. Next slide, please. This is the information I convey to you all that we will give. Our minister will award flare gas utilization in 2022. The registration due date is June the 30 in 2002. We can contact the contact person here. Next slide, please. And at the demand side, we have fuel switching, gas fuel for transportation, and city gas. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention, and back to Bu Debbie.
Thank you so much, Pak Juniarto. It's very insightful for having from the point of view as the government, as the regulators, and it's giving us lots of hope for Indonesia for sure. That as seen as in your slide, that we can see from the upstream, at least we can see that the chart show that you showed before, that the utilizations of the fuel and flare are still always higher than the producing itself. So it's we are starting a small step now to the more big leap for achieving the net zero emission, hopefully. And then all of us here probably as we knew that most of our speakers here and our young professionals here are part of the upstream and oil and gas, could be participated to achieve that objective actually. So thank you, Pak Juniarto, again. So this time now we are going to move to our second speaker. So we will have all of our questions and answers by the end of after all of our speakers been presenting the presentations. So we'd like to move to the next agenda for having the presentations from our second speaker. We will have Conti Tan from Senior Partner at McKinsey Company. So Pak Conti, please, the time is yours, and we'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Debbie. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera, and a very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about decarbonization roadmap and what this could mean actually in terms of building new green businesses as the next S-curve of growth, particularly for oil and gas companies, which are of course caught in this energy transition. I'll just directly share a screen here. So there are a few messages that I would love to share with you today. The first message is that Indonesia matters in global decarbonization. And why does Indonesia matter? We think that Indonesia matters because it is uniquely positioned on two sides of the equation. On one side, quote unquote, the problem side, it is already the 8th largest global emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, and this position will probably increase in a business as usual scenario given the growth, the overall GDP growth of the country. But on the other side of the equation, Indonesia is an even bigger part of the solution to decarbonization. It has the second largest low-cost nature-based solutions potential in the world, right? And for the energy sector, when we look at the future scenario towards 2060 NZE, energy transition will obviously play a very critical role, but this will also require scaling up new green businesses that would actually create new types of growth for companies. So key message number 2, upstream companies, of course, need to decarbonize their core business. And Pak Juniato actually has touched on many of these aspects in the core business, like, for example, reducing flaring to zero or routine flaring to zero by 2030, or adopting green or sustainable designs, or optimizing the portfolio to be lower carbon. However, we also think that beyond decarbonizing the core business, there are actually new business opportunities in the adjacencies or even in the step outs. And this is where I would like to focus more on today. What are some of these adjacent business opportunities for an upstream oil and gas company, particularly in the Indonesian market? We think that there's a potential of $18 to $29 billion of potential revenue by 2030 for companies in Indonesia around 4 types of businesses. Carbon capture, use and sequestration, which is one of the larger opportunities. And we'll talk about it from a demand side. Hydrogen, which is another big opportunity. It is a lot more uncertain, but at the same time, it is going to be an important part of the solution, one way or another, as we shall share in a bit. Geothermal, which is, of course, something which is underrepresented in the energy mix of Indonesia, given the resource potential. And last but not least, mini LNG as a transition before reaching a 100% renewable scenario much further in the future. And I'm talking about even beyond 2060 for us to be getting into 100% renewables in the power sector. And last but not least, how to capture these businesses. We believe that there is an incubator approach, and there are many forms of this incubator. But in short, how do you create a bit more of a startup environment in well-established oil and gas businesses? So on the first key message, Indonesia matters because today, as you know, Indonesia contributes already 1.6 gigatons of CO2 equivalent per year, and that's equivalent to 2 to 3% of global emissions. That puts Indonesia as the 8th largest polluter globally. But on the other side, Indonesia also owns, the second largest mangrove cover, the highest number of fauna species, 15% of the global natural carbon solutions potential, with 300 billion tons of CO2 carbon storage potential within Indonesian land. And that puts Indonesia as the second largest global low-cost NCS potential globally. So where does that lead us with the recent announcement at COP26 last year by President Jokowi to actually target net zero by 2060 or even sooner? Well, we looked at a few scenarios, and here is one scenario if you were to reimagine the energy market of Indonesia by 2060. And here, it is one pathway towards net zero 2060. And you can see on the left here, one important thing to mention here, the dotted line shows the business as usual, BAU scenario, assuming the energy mix today continues. And of course, there's a continued growth, which of course, Indonesia will continue to experience. So it's very important to bear in mind that BAU line is actually steadily increasing every year from the current 1.6 or so to more than 3 or 3.2 gigatons of CO2 if we do nothing or continue to do as usual. Now, you see the different color bars there are showing the different contributing sectors to carbon emissions. And some of the biggest emitting sectors are, of course, buildings, industry, power, and transport, which collectively contribute probably close to about 50% of the total emissions. Now, what would this mean by 2050 if we are going to have momentum to achieve NZE 2060? Well, for buildings, 60% of cooking will have to be electrified, right, using electric stoves. For example, half of industrial activities emissions will need to be covered or offsetted by CCUS. In the power sector today, we are a roughly 70 gigawatt system, we will actually need 204 gigawatts of capacity, of which 66% or 2/3 will have to be renewables. And what does that mean for the remaining? Well, it'll still be coal and gas, we think, by 2050, but about 100 million tons per annum of CO2 will need to be captured to put us on the trajectory towards NZE 2060. And transport will be a very, very different market altogether. Unlike what we see on the roads today, it will be 100% electrified. EV sales will be 100%. There will be no ICE sales anymore. And even in terms of air transport, we are talking about 40% penetration of hybrid planes. So it's a very different world. Now, the question is, what are the opportunities that we see going forward across these sectors for Indonesia? We think that it's a very exciting future. It's challenging, but it's also very exciting and full of opportunity. Up to $45 to $60 billion of potential economic value added to our GDP in Indonesia from green economy opportunities. For example, in power, in renewables across solar, hydro, geothermal, and others. Large-scale battery storage, which will be needed, particularly in a renewable-dominated grid. Advanced solar PV technology and assembly. Right now, of course, we have a very small subscale solar PV manufacturing sector in Indonesia. And of course, the modernization of Indonesia's power grid to be a smart grid. In industry, we are talking about 15 to $20 billion of GDP potential. And here there's carbon capture, CO2 storage and usage, blue or green hydrogen, electrolyzer manufacturing, as well as direct air and point source capture technology. And in transportation, 10 to $15 billion of market opportunity coming from electrification of powertrains, EV manufacturing, charging infrastructure, battery-grade nickel, biofuels, and hydrogen for transport. And this is not even an exhaustive list of the opportunities, but we think these are some of the big new green economy opportunities that exist for Indonesia. So what does this mean to an upstream oil and gas company? Well, I think, of course, number one is to continue to decarbonize the core business. And a lot of this will actually be targeted towards fulfilling the NDC commitments of 2030. For example, in emissions reduction from energy efficiency, methane capture, flare gas and recovery, and so on and so forth, sustainable design and portfolio optimization. But what is really exciting is how do we grow beyond the core business in the adjacencies, and we see 4 opportunities here for an upstream company: carbon capture and sequestration, hydrogen, geothermal, and mini LNG. And of course, there will be some that might also explore, further step outs from the adjacency, like in batteries, EV, mining, as well as in the carbon market creation. So now, speaking of these adjacencies, what are these opportunities in Indonesia? Well, before we go there, I'd like to share, that this is not something that is also totally unique to only companies in Indonesia, but when we look at it globally from some benchmarks, we see that most global energy players are making their bets and putting investments into each of these 3 pillars across decarbonization, adjacent businesses, as well as step outs. And particularly in the adjacent businesses, for example, Exxon has committed globally to invest $3 billion in just the next 3 years on CCUS. NG, hundreds of millions in mini LNG and trucking infrastructure. Closer to home, Petronas aiming to deliver 30 over gigawatts of renewable capacity, including hydrogen, through their new solutions company, Gentari. So this is something which global players are also making their bets and also positioning themselves to benefit from. So looking into Indonesia, so across these 4 opportunities, carbon capture in particular, we see this as a $10 to $15 billion market opportunity by 2030. And this, comes from 10 industrial or high carbon clusters that emit up to 170 to 220 million tons per annum. We also see the potential in hydrogen, the next biggest opportunity from, green or blue hydrogen, about $6 to $10 billion and 2 to 2.5 million tons per year. Geothermal, in the short term, relatively smaller, but it could grow much bigger. And we can see up to 4.5 gigawatts of additional capacity. And finally, mini LNG as a transition low carbon fuel, particularly to monetize stranded gas and to also fuel the current diesel power plants, or to replace the current diesel power plants across remote parts of Indonesia. And at least 32 locations have been announced by PLN, which would account for 100 to 230 million cars per day. So looking first at carbon capture. So we find that there are 10 clusters that are the largest, or industrial clusters that are the largest emitters of greenhouse gases or CO2 in Indonesia, right? So you can see that most of them are located in Java dan juga di Sumatra, but you also see one cluster in Bontang. And these 10 clusters, as mentioned earlier, emit annually up to 220 million tons per year. Now, the opportunity size, therefore, if we were to capture this carbon and sequester it, is about $10 to $15 billion, depending on the pricing range that you would assume. But we're assuming $60 to $70 per ton towards 2030. The issue here is, of course, the economics. And you can see here that, at the moment, it is still very expensive to do CCUS in Indonesia. It's up to $80 per ton, of which 70 or 80% of it is actually from the capture cost, which of course varies significantly depending on how concentrated the CO2 source is, whether it is very pure and highly concentrated, in which case then it is much lower, or it would be more diluted gas streams from power plants or cement production plants. But thank you. Because of the technology development, we actually think that this will come down by 2030 and certainly by 2060. So, and by the way, this also varies quite significantly from each one cluster to another. If we talk about hydrogen, we also see this as an opportunity of up to 2.5 million tons per year just domestically. We are not counting even the export potential. And there are already various announcements of potential green hydrogen plants in Indonesia. And we are particularly excited about three sectors: transportation, ammonia, as well as iron and steel, for various reasons. But we think that this will be a $6 to $10 billion opportunity. Thirdly, geothermal. Now, geothermal today is a very small part of the Indonesian primary energy mix, roughly 2 gigawatts. But it is already putting Indonesia as one of the world's largest producers of geothermal. But if you look at the potential, an additional 26 gigawatts could be added. And that is why I think we are actually bullish about the potential for geothermal in Indonesia. Indonesia has the potential to be the world world leader in geothermal power. And we see this across a whole range of potential sites and projects, which you see here on this page. And so we imagine that by 2030, up to 4.5 gigawatts or $2.5 billion of revenue potential from geothermal. And last but not least, mini LNG. Now, mini LNG has been looked at for many years, and unfortunately, it has not yet taken off. But we do think that if there is a push towards NZE, it will play a role in Indonesia, given the large amount of stranded gas that Indonesia contains, and at the same time, the large amount of remote locations which currently rely on diesel-fired power plants, which are, of course, the most expensive form of power. Lastly, what will it take for a company, an oil and gas company, well established to capture these opportunities. And we think there are four incubator approaches here. Firstly, new business built within the parent company, maybe through a subsidiary, to create some separation and accountability, or as BP has done with its launchpad, to invest in other startups or internal business ideas and to scale them as quickly as possible, using a hybrid of venture capital versus a new business build model. Or C, pure venture capital investing in a large portfolio of companies and then looking, whether to, eventually farm into some of these startups or businesses. And last but not least, M&A or JVs like what BP did in acquiring Finite Carbon to enter into the carbon solutions market. So those were the four messages that I had to share today. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you, Pak Conti, for the presentations. Actually, the presentations gives a lot of information for sure. It's been mixed feeling for seeing your key messages slide, actually, Pak Conti. Since in your key messages slide, it's showing that it gives us like a feelings like Indonesians matters in global decarbonizations. Indonesia specifically is the 8th largest global emitter, but at the same time is also luckily we are still having Borneo as the forest with your mentions before that the low cost NCS potentials. But it's insightful for having that in your slide, just putting the for adjacent business opportunities, and hopefully, and then we also encourage the attendees for, if you guys want to dig in detail, please feel free to drop the questions, since from the previous slide been sharing by Pak Conti, me myself is having lots of questions to be asked for sure, but we need to move to the third FGD speaker. Thank you so much, Pak Conti. We will talk to you soon in the Q&A sessions, and then we'd like to move to our third speaker. We are having Pak Martin Objal, partner in the Restart Energy. So this is Pak Martin. We'll have these slide presentations, especially in the technical and operational perspective from the technical consultancy. So Pak Martin, please to have your sessions now, and then the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Debbie, and thanks for this opportunity to speak here today. I'm very excited to share some perspectives on the challenges and opportunities in implementing CCUS. I'll share my screen now. Are you able to see it? See the presentation?
Yes, we can see your slide, Pak Martin, clear.
Great.
And also your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first thing I'll start with is that what we're seeing now is really a paradigm shift when it comes to CCUS. So historically, most of the CCUS projects that we've seen have been focused on enhanced oil recovery, or EOR, in order to increase recovery from oil and gas fields. But what we really see now is that the future projects are focusing more on permanent storage and on using CCUS as a tool in tackling climate change and to reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And this new paradigm also brings some challenges to the attention. The first one is the urgency of developing CCUS projects. As you know, in order to reach the target set out by the Paris Agreement, we will have to reduce CO2 emissions immediately to reach net zero by 2050. And this will really require a major step up in the investment in CCUS. The second challenge is scale. With this Paris Agreement, we think that to reach net zero by 2050, you will need to develop around 8 gigatons of 8 gigatons per year of CCUS capacity, which will require bigger projects and also more new projects. Which brings me to the next point, which is the need for investment into CCS opportunities. And as Pak Kunti presented in the last presentation, in Indonesia itself, this represents an opportunity for around 10 to 15 billion by 2030. And finally, it requires governmental support and regulations to make sure that this is done in a way that is also supporting the environmental targets. Oops. So now over to some of the challenges regarding CCUS projects. So the first one is the off-gas condition, or the state of the gas that you are capturing this carbon from, where there are different pressure regimes, different temperature regimes that require that causes technical challenges. Secondly, it's the energy intensity. So doing CCUS is a quite energy intensive operation, and that also varies between different capture technologies and different capture sources. Thirdly, it's a process efficiency. So CCS typically require chemical processes, which are very sensitive to temperature and pressure changes. And these chemicals that are being used can also be subject to degradation. Thirdly, most CCS projects that we've seen to date have been relatively small in size. And in order to meet the sort of need for CCS in the future, you will have to see larger projects, and you will have to see new technologies being implemented that are not yet proven. And finally, there are challenges relating to retrofitting existing facilities with CCS, and this will be needed in order to again reach the targets. And then if we look at what are the sort of characteristics of successful and not so successful CCS projects. So we've grouped projects into two kind of buckets here, where you see typical projects that are disadvantaged to the left, and then projects that are advantaged in the right column here. And the disadvantaged projects are projects relating to things like coal power or other emission sources with high complexity gases such as cement, iron, steel. And it's also brownfield projects where you have to retrofit the CCS facilities onto existing plants or existing facilities. When it comes to the transportation segment of the CCUS value chain, we think that the disadvantaged projects are the ones that only have one emission source, where you rely on transportation from only one plant to a specific storage site, and also where there's long distance between the capture site and storage site, and also where there's no existing infrastructure in place. When it comes to the storage area, we think that the disadvantaged projects are in frontier areas where there are no existing infrastructure and where there are also unfavorable rock formations. And on the right, we see that the advantage projects are projects relating to emission sources that have a high concentration of CO2 from in the first place, such as gas processing, refining, hydrogen and chemical production, and also where you don't have an existing facility, but where you build everything from scratch. When it comes to the transportation, we believe in the cluster type of developments where you gather emissions from different sources and combine them into a transportation segment before you transport them collectively to the storage site. And also where you have close distance between the capture site and the storage, and also where there is existing infrastructure such as oil and gas pipelines that can be retrofitted to transport the CO2. When it comes to storage, we believe in projects where there is already been explored, for instance, for oil and gas activity, and where there are pre-existing facilities and favorable rock formation. Now, if we start looking into the different components of the CCS value chain, we can start with the capture part and look at what are the key technical consideration there. And the key thing to look at is really the CO2 concentration and also the pressure regime in the gases that you capture the CO2 from. So you see at the very lower end of the pressure and CO2 concentration, you have direct air capture, where you capture CO2 directly from the air, where the concentration is very low, around 0.04% of the air that we surround ourselves with is CO2, and that really increases the cost. But if you go down to the CO2 source at the bottom here with a high CO2 concentration, there you find things like hydrogen production, chemical production, oil refining, and gas processing. And there you have much higher concentration, typically 5 to 10 times what you have in the air. So that is really a key consideration. That is the capture source that you capture the CO2 from. When it comes to the transportation sector segment, the first part you need to look at is the conditioning of the CO2, because before you can transport it, you need to transform it into a form that can be transported by your sort of transportation medium. And there we have two main options. One is to transfer the CO2 as liquefied CO2 in either, you can do that in ships or you can do it on trains or trucks, and then you need to liquefy it first. The way to do that is to reduce the temperature down to -30 to -50 degrees, and also increase the pressure to around 5 to 15 bar before it reaches the liquid state and you're able to transport it in tanks. This is a quite, I would say, novel approach, and the first project that uses this is currently under development, expected to come online in 2024, and that's the Northern Light project in Norway. The more traditional way of conditioning the CO2 is to compress it and transport it in pipelines, where you typically keep it at a quite medium temperature of around 45 degrees Celsius and a very high pressure of 150 bar before you put it into the transportation network. And this method of transportation, as I said, is really the most widely used today. And especially in the US and North America, you have a quite well-developed network of existing pipelines for transportation of CO2. So looking at these two options for transportation, both pipeline transportation to the left and then vessel transportation to the right. If you look at the pipeline transportation, there you typically have a quite high upfront investment before you can start transporting the CO2. So this is very much sort of capex heavy. But the limitation of pipeline transportation is also that you really limit yourself to very fixed sort of relationship between the capture site and the storage site. So you need to build a specific pipeline between where you capture it and where you store it, and that is not very flexible, and it sort of locks in the transportation route. The second option, which is now starting to become more common, is to use vessel to transport it between the capture site and the sink, and that brings a lot of flexibility in the sense that you can vary where you store the CO2 from the same capture site. In this case, there are many initiatives going on now to qualify different chip design and to make those technically and commercially feasible. And here we look at some examples using the different technologies or different ways of transporting CO2. At the top there, you have the vessels, which is currently being developed for the Northern Light project in Norway. And this technology has now reached technology readiness level 9. And then the second transportation method described here is the onshore pipeline, which one example is the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line in Canada. And this is also quite common. And then thirdly, offshore pipelines. This is also something that is quite novel and quite new, but we're seeing this now being used in the Northern Endurance Partnership in the UK. Typically what we see is that offshore pipelines are more expensive than onshore, but they are also, they often see more larger economies of scale because there are often larger structure offshore where you can transport the CO2 to. So you can achieve some economies of scale that can offset the sort of the higher cost. And here you see what I was talking about earlier, that in the US, you already have a quite well-developed network of pipelines that are built to transport CO2. And you can here see the different capture sites as the green dots, and then the pipelines as the blue lines that stretches across the US and also Canada. However, this CO2 storage site that you see here, those are mainly used for EOR purposes, so enhanced oil recovery, and it's not really for permanent storage. Then looking at the storage segment. So one of the key consideration here is to select reservoirs that can hold this CO2 and store it permanently without leaking back into the surroundings and the atmosphere. And actually here, the key thing is that the requirements for CO2 storage is in many ways the same as for oil and gas fields. You need a seal that are able to trap the CO2 so that it doesn't leak to the surface. And also you would typically prefer open structures without too much fractures and compartments. So the key message here is that the areas that are suitable for CO2 storage is very much the same that are suitable for oil and gas reservoirs, and hence depleted oil and gas fields are a very good source for CO2 storage. And this is Pak Yuniatu also showed this earlier, where he showed that the potential for CO2 storage in depleted oil fields in Indonesia is around 2 gigatons. The second thing I want to highlight is that is the timeline that it takes from you start looking into CCS to you actually start injecting CO2 into the underground. And this is a case example from the Northern Lights project, again in Norway, that started the initial activities back in 2007 and is expected to start injecting in 2 years in 2024. So there is a 17-year time period from the first screening studies were conducted until it actually becomes operational. And before you can get there, you need to go through several stages. You typically start by screening, and then you do seismic to look more into specific sites and identify specific reservoirs. And then you typically do pre-feasibility studies before actual feasibility studies. And then finally, you need to license the area to do CO2 storage before you can start drilling the well and develop the CCS site. So there is a long lead time for this project. And at the same time, you have the urgency to develop these CCS projects in order to mitigate further climate change. And then another important consideration is once you've started injecting CO2 into the reservoir, you also need to continuously monitor the reservoir and also make sure that you measure it and verify that it's being injected and that's being safely stored. And there's several aspects that come into this. One is the operational aspect, where you need to continuously verify the well integrity to make sure that there's no leakages and other challenges.
2 minutes left.
Yeah, and then the second here is regulations. Many countries don't really have a regulation in place for CCS, and that also includes Indonesia, which is currently working on it, but more work needs to be done there to make sure that this is done in a safe way. The third being commercial aspect, and the fourth being public acceptance, and to address site-specific concerns and also assure the safety of workers and also the public environment. This just shows that sort of one development that we expect is that the cost will come down as the technologies mature. What we have seen for projects that have been developed historically is that the costs have been in the range of between 80 to 220 USD per ton of CO2. But we expect this to come down substantially over the next couple of years with the projects that are currently being developed and the ones that will be developed in the future, and come down to a level of around 50 to 150 USD per ton of CO2. Brought down by new technologies and also economies of scale. And then just my last slide, I want to emphasize at the end now that I think Indonesia is very well positioned to take advantage of this opportunity within the CCS space. And the reason for that, if you look at the typical factors that determines a project to be advantage, Indonesia has a lot of these qualities. So first of all, you do have a lot of Indonesia has a lot of the gas, the capture sites that are beneficial, such as gas processing, refining, and chemical facilities. You do also have several emission clusters. It's close to storage facilities, and you also have existing infrastructure in place to transport the CO2 from the capture site to the storage. And finally, you do have a very well understood underground or reservoir from the oil and gas industry with many mature and depleted oil and gas facilities that can be used for CCS. So I think this is really a great opportunity for Indonesia and an opportunity that cannot be overlooked. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention and give the word back to Bu Devi. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Martin, for having your slide, actually. Thank you for sharing all the case studies that you've been shared in your previous slide. It looked like you mentioned in your slide that it's starting from 2007. I believe that's from Northern Light. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then the first exploration wells was drilled in 2020. It took 13 years, I believe, if I'm not miscount, 13 years to start the project to be implemented. So we knew that Indonesia now is at the very early stage, and then hopefully with all the collaborations and then synergy from all the sectors, we're going to go through this roadmap. If you mentioned before, the beginning with the CCS and then CCUS, so we can see lots of analogs and all the case studies from the other area to be part of the learning curve or the lesson learned for Indonesia. So thank you, Pak Martin, and we're going to talk to you very soon in the Q&A sessions. And now, as we move to the last speaker, the last but not least, for sure, we saw already the flow of the discussions for all the attendees. We start with Pak Juniarto from the government or regulators point of view, and then we're having Pak Juniarto mentions about some map for the initiations of the net zero emissions, and then Pak Conti with the opportunities in the sectoral, and then continuing with challenges and also opportunities from Pak Martin in Restart. And then the last one, we're going to have Pak Oki Muraza, on behalf of the oil and gas company. For sure, Pak Oki Muraza will stand from PT Pertamina Persero. Pak Oki will present from the point of view is oil and gas company to achieve this decarbonization roadmap. And then these presentations must be very interested to be related to the last three speakers for sure. So Pak Oki, the time and the floor for the presentations and for the last sessions of the FGD will be yours. Thank you, Pak Oki.
Thank you, Bu Devi. Is the voice clear, Bu Devi?
Yes, Pak Oki's voice is clear, and we can also see your presentations nicely from here.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Devi. Selamat sore, very good afternoon. My best greetings for the organizer, Pak Erwin, Bu Devi, Mas Dodi, and all organizing team. We really appreciate this FGD this afternoon. Also, my best greetings for other speakers this afternoon. We have Pak Juniarto, Pak Kunti, and we just enjoyed the presentation from Martin Opdal. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. So, in the next about 15 minutes, I would like to highlight some of the initiatives that we have in Pertamina Group in decarbonization. I'm Oki Muraza from Research and Technology Innovation. So let's start with the national green strategy. So in Indonesia, the government already released the national green energy strategy. So basically, we would like to move in the decarbonization and energy transitions by having a higher portion of renewables in our energy mix. So as you can see, we are trying to reach almost a quarter in 2025 for renewables, 23% portion for renewables. And then in 2050, we are expecting to reach 31%. So almost 1/3 of the energy mix will be from renewables. Of course, it doesn't mean that the oil and gas will have sunset, because basically the demand by volume will be continuously increased in 2025 and also 2050. So we need more oil and gas business, as the government already announced the 1 million barrel per day expectation. And then as the state-owned enterprise, we align our program with the Grand National Energy Strategy from the government. As you can see that we still have some challenges, yeah, in terms of the production of the crude oil, and then the situations, the production of LPG that we are still importing, and then the infrastructure for gas is also still developing. Yeah, so we try to see potential contributions, yeah, to in order to align with the Grand National Energy Strategy. We can see that Pertamina is trying to increase the production, yeah, by having massive exploration studies. And then in terms of production, we also try to increase the production by EOR, yeah. Actually, we have Erwin here, one of the highly expert EOR in Pertamina, in which that we would like to have a campaign, not only by thermal, which is already proven in Pertamina Rokan, but also CO2 EOR, chemical EOR, microbial EOR, etc. And then in the downstream side, we are trying to improve the quality of our fuel by having revamping. Yeah, it's called refining development program, and also a grassroots refinery. In addition to that, we are also developing the green refinery and also ethanol refinery in order to have low carbon solutions for the downstream, yeah, etc., etc. And then we also seen on this slide basically the roadmap to reach the decarbonization itself. You can see here that Pertamina has already set ambitious target, yeah, for the decarbonization. Yeah, so we for scope 1 and scope 2, yeah, we are in very good position, in which that now we are already reducing the emission by 27%, and we expect that we are fully aligned with the expectation from the government to reach 30% reduction by 2030. And then, yeah, this is basically emphasizing the achievement that we have. So we are achieving now 27% emission reductions. Yeah, this is fully aligned with the target of national determined contribution in 2030 by 29%. And indeed, we can see the alignment with the presentation that we have from the government, yeah, from Pak Juniarto. If you can see here, let me try to have the pointer. Yeah, so flare gas utilization is about 75%. Yeah, this is also in line with the expectation from the government, which was presented by Pak Juniarto just a few minutes ago. And then energy efficiency. Indeed, energy efficiency, as you know, that in the time of energy security, very high commodity price, high crude oil price, etc., energy efficiency is very important. And then switching to gas and other activities also will contribute to reduce our emissions. Yeah. And then as part of the commitment from the holding, so we are indeed expecting to spend enough capital expenditure. This is among the highest for national energy company. Yeah, so we are going to spend enough capex. This is in this case about $11 billion for gas and renewables. Yeah, this is among the highest for NOC basically. And of course, with the target that we have from the government in order to have not the declining as the society is basically increasing, the population is increasing. So we need to put enough capex in the upstream, also substantial capex for the downstream to improve the fuel quality, etc., etc. After the commitment, now we would like to go deeper into the programs that we have, as Pak Kunti already highlighted. Yeah, so Indonesia has huge potential in terms of geothermal. Yeah, so if you can increase the capacity of our green electricity, it will be a good achievement for the nation. Now, Pertamina has the operation about 672 megawatt, and we expect to reach within these few years to reach above 1100 megawatt. And then what we also have in Indonesia, basically the biomass and also vegetable oil. So here we have the bioenergy, in which that we are developing the green refinery in Cilacap and Plaju. And bioblending, basically bioblending, we are already the largest on earth in terms of farming biodiesel. We are also stimulating the utilization of biomass and also biogas. And then we have a couple of projects, including to produce low carbon fuel bioethanol from palm oil waste, etc. And also we are trying to produce renewable gas from liquid waste. Basically, in Indonesia, we have about 800 palm oil mill, in which that we can utilize the liquid waste. And then, of course, hydrogen. Pak Kunti already highlighted that we have potential both green and also blue hydrogen. The green will come from geothermal, and we are also studying now the potential to have hydro. And then the blue hydrogen is basically easier, because we just need to couple the production of hydrogen that we have in Indonesia, be it fertilizer or ammonia company, with CCUS, in which that Pertamina also will also in the scheme. And then in addition to that, we have the government program, the downstream of the mining, in which that Indonesia is one of the largest producer of nickel, and we are trying to have the IBC, Indonesia Battery Corporation, in which that we expect to have this amount of production in 2029. Of course, in addition to that, we are also working on the ecosystems, charging station, and battery swap. And I'm going to highlight deeper for a few slides on CCUS, as Pak Kunti and Pak Juniarto and also Martin emphasized on the CCUS. Indeed, this is one of the program that we have in Pertamina Group. Then we are exploring solar. We are installing solar PV in our fuel station, in our refinery, and we are exploring the potential of wind and also hydro. So the this be it variable or base load renewable will be utilized to produce not only electricity but also hydrogen. As Pak Kunti mentioned, that we have the market, especially for Japan market for hydrogen. And of course, this is the continuous program in which that we are trying to have emission reduction and decarbonizations, including flare gas utilization, energy efficiency, etc. Of course, we are also studying how to develop the carbon markets among SOE and also similar activities in carbon trading.
Minutes remaining.
Oh, okay. So these are the initiatives that we have. It's highlighting the natural-based solutions, green industrial clusters that we have, clean energy, so basically blending biogas with our LNG, and of course hydrogen. Of course, the heaviest activities is around CCUS. We have huge activities basically for CCUS, including Bu Debbie is one of our experts in CCUS initiatives. So this is basically our CCUS. Unfortunately, I cannot explain deeper because actually we have a lot of initiatives which are still in the pipeline. This is some of the studies that we have with so many partners. You can find it from media. Some of them already announced. be it MOU and also GSA. Yeah. So indeed, Indonesia has one of the largest CO2 storage in ASEAN. Yeah, in which that we would like to utilize these potentials in order to explore opportunities for decarbonization. Okay, Martin also explained about this. Indeed, CCUS depend a lot on the technology for the capture. Yeah, either it is low carbon from coal power plant or high concentrated CO2 coming from gas plant. Then transport. This is kind of serendipity indeed, in which that we are trying to find CO2 sink as close as possible to the CO2 source, and of course storage. Yeah, so Erwin, Bu Debbie, and other colleagues can explain more about this, in which that we are studying injectivity, well integrity, geomechanics, etc. And of course, we need to organize the CCUS activities to find proper commercial models and also to have policy, yeah, in order to support this. In addition to storage, we are also exploring utilization. Yeah, we have a lot of initiatives. The recent one is basically we are building a demonstration plan for CO2 to products. Yeah, so Pertamina is quite advanced in terms of the CO2 utilizations. We are also exploring currently with our potential partner CO2 methanations, CO2 to methane. We are exploring CO2 microalgae to polymers, CO2 to methanols in one of our places in Indonesia. A lot of activities in the conversion of CO2. And then natural-based solutions, as Pak Kunti mentioned, this is still the cheapest option. Yeah, this is important for Indonesia with GDP per capita less than $5,000. Yeah, we need to have something affordable for our society. So indeed, the low carbon solutions by using natural-based solutions, mangrove, etc., forest conservation are basically the best options. So these are some of the potential trees. Biofuel and hydrogen. Yeah, I already highlighted this before. Yeah, this is the ecosystem for EV and also the monetizing of the low-rank coal to dimethyl ether. Yeah, challenges indeed. In B20, we are discussing about challenges. Basically, it's about the technology readiness. I think Martin already highlighted about this TRL, etc. And economic feasibility, Martin already also mentioned about this. Also, to some extent, Pak Kunti also explained about this. So I'm going to be quick on this slide. And then this is the last slide. So Pertamina is actively having contributions in Business 20, in which that our CEO is the chair. Then the Pujiter is Pak Agung from Jababeka, and myself is the policy manager for Business 20, in which that basically we are trying to promote the decarbonization, yeah, by acceleration of the renewable energy and to ensure a just and affordable transition. This is very important for developing countries. And last but not least, energy security and access. This is very important also for any nations, basically, even more important for developing countries. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity. I would like to thank the organizer for a very nice conference, and I'm looking forward to have further discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Pauki. It's amazing. Thank you, Pauki, again. It's amazing for seeing how Pertamina put the high level priority for the decarbonizations. We can see from Pauki's slide that even Pertamina's put like if I'm not mistaken, from the slide, Pauki's slide is putting like 11 billion only for gas and also NRE, and part of them is for sure for the decarbonizations. And also lots of initiatives been put from Pertamina as the innovations, research, and everything to put ongoing progress and ongoing project to make this decarbonization roadmap that Indonesia's been committed to, and also it's been starting from Pertamina, and hopefully it will be continuing also by the other oil and gas company. So thank you so much, Pauki. We will talk very soon, since we are going to have the Q&A right now. And then this Q&A will be start from the questions from the attendees that we have in the chat box. And also there are some questions that we are having from our committees as well. Since we are starting this session, it's a bit late, so apologize for the attendees and probably for the speakers that we are having at least 40 minutes for the Q&A sessions. So for these Q&A sessions now in the chat box, we already have several questions that needs to be answered by the speakers over here. So in this, for the first questions that we are going to ask, it's asked by Pak Lutfi. It's stated here is the questions for Pak Juniarto first. Hopefully, Pak Juniarto, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
The questions for you. And then these questions stated about how the ministry strategy to engage multi-stakeholders or multi-sectoral industries in order to speed up CAPEX implementations of renewable energy initiatives. Since we knew that there are CAPEX competitions between the fossil energies, and now most of the industries need also to implement the renewable energies. So, Pak Juniarto, if you these questions, the attendees or the audience would like for you to have this answer. Thank you, Pak Juni.
Okay, thank you, Bu Debbie. Thank you for the question. What this question address is, I don't know whether it is the implementation of renewable energy initiative in upstream oil and gas or in the other industry.
I think from the question, since the comparisons is between fossil, I believe we assume that this is in the upstream, Pak Juni.
Okay, if the question address the upstream oil and gas, I think until now I haven't seen any strategy from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource, but just yesterday I have information that ONWJ PHE will use renewable energy, in this case solar energy, to powering one of its platform at the North Java Sea at AFSA platform. That is the information that I got, but I think the strategy that Mr. Lutfi asked, I have not seen any of them. Maybe that's it, Bu Debbie.
Thank you, Pak Juni. So yes, I believe that from Pak Juni's answers for Pak Lutfi is in most of the cases the engage of the strategy will become from the industries itself, as mentioned also from Pak Oki's slide, and also Pak Konti, and in opportunities. the ministry will have to regulate the regulations to implement this one. But indeed, for the strategy, as mentioned by Pak Juni, capex will be initiated by the industries, and then it will be implemented by the industry itself during the operational. I believe hopefully, and that could be answered the questions by Pak Lutfi. And now, if I may to move to the next questions, it's also asked by Pak Lutfi, but it's addressed to Pak Conti actually. So the specific question for Pak Conti from Pak Lutfi is how McKinsey's suggestions or best practices to embrace clean power sources and internalize climate change warning in order to drive attractive policy creations in Indonesia. So that's the questions, Pak Conti.
Thank you.
Hopefully you can answer these questions. Thank you, Pak Conti.
Okay, I will try. Thank you, Bu Debbie, and terima kasih, Pak Lutfi. I think there are, as I showed earlier, two sectors that are very important in the energy transition to decarbonize Indonesia. One is in the transportation sector, the other is the power sector. I think that in the transportation sector, if we believe that electric vehicles will be the wave of the future, then there is a potential for Indonesia to actually unlock the entire electric vehicle ecosystem here through a set of incentives as well as disincentives, right? To promote the right things for the transfer from the usual oil-based vehicles to electric vehicles. For example, today the prices of an electric vehicle are obviously 50 to 100% higher than ICE vehicles, and you could look at it like a two-wheeler. And the question is, what would it take to get consumers to want to switch? And many countries that have successfully unlocked the electric vehicle ecosystem have done so by providing incentives, and therefore maybe saving in terms of the oil subsidy on one hand, but kind of shifting away from pure oil subsidy to kind of electric vehicle subsidy is one way to think about it. The second thing is that Indonesia is very rich in nickel resources, right? But not all of that has been fully converted into downstream processing yet and into batteries. And so at the moment, there's of course a big, competition between NCM versus LFP batteries. But Indonesia could actually think of how to incentivize NCM batteries in domestic production, particularly, if it is used for domestic, in the domestic market, to at least give this a bigger boost and unlock, therefore, the nickel reserves of this country. Indonesia is actually potentially going to be the world #1 in nickel production over the next few years. So basically, we are going to be the Saudi of nickel, if we wanted to be. So what would it take to be the Saudi of nickel? And what kind of policies would the Saudi of nickel do, right? To ensure that you control the value of your own natural resources. And then in the power sector, I think it's a difficult issue because obviously, if the electricity tariffs were much higher, then that would actually spur renewable investments versus much cheaper coal. However, affordability is a big issue, and we cannot expect Indonesian the consumer to suddenly pay double the price of the current tariff. But I think in this case, the government could play a role in terms of managing. There's a timing mismatch here, right? We need the transition to happen for probably in the next 10, 20 years. But the affordability to pay may not come in 10 to 20 years, but perhaps towards the 20 to 40 year time frame. And in which case, then, is there a way to budget for, that subsidy in electricity to be increased, but at the same time, maybe creating a revenue generating mechanism in return for investing into renewables and covering that additional PPP? Can we create an Indonesia carbon fund that would actually collect all the carbon credits, of course, all done validated, and actually store it as a carbon fund for when prices of carbon will go up. We think eventually, maybe it's 50, maybe it's $100 per ton one day. And if these carbon credits are evergreen, you could actually start trading in carbon in the future and collect back the revenue for the government, having invested upfront into that renewable transition first. Anyway, some ideas, no perfect answers. Thank you.
Yes, but it gives some insight that indeed, as mentioned before by Pa Juniorto at the first questions, that the first answers, that now in some industries there, I try to correlate between this one in the way that you answer that this carbon credit, the way how all the clean power source and in relate with the climate change warning will be work at the same way. So there is need there is a need that for some method or for being applicable. It could be start first from the industries before it's going to the more people, I think, like the household needs or something like that. It means indeed that's a great idea actually, Pa Conti, and then it's taking a small step now for Indonesia, I believe, since as per slide mentions by Pa Juniorto that I think ESDM now is still on a way of progressing, at least starting. There is a decree already for some I believe that gas flat and how to utilize that, and then how to put that in relate to how it can be used. That's gonna be needs more progress, and how it can be delivered to wider consumers. I believe hopefully that could be happen in the next few years. Thank you, Pak Conti. Hopefully that's the idea, and then we grab that idea and hopefully we can implement that very soon with all of our works from here. So let's move to the next. There are lots of questions actually, and I'd like to move to the last chat box that we have here, since there are hopefully after we got the answers from Pak Oki, and then I can move to Pak Martin. So there is a questions here, Pak Oki, from Pak William. So the questions is especially for Pak Oki, could you please elaborate more on the current progress of the green hydrogen project derived from the hydropower that you mentioned before in the slides? Does Pertamina collaborate with other parties to research the potentials, or is there? That's the questions actually. Point there. And then the next questions, is there a figure for potential productions capacity? I think that's the questions from Pak William, Pak Oki, related with the green hydrogen project from hydropower. Hopefully it can be answered by Pak Oki. Thank you, Pak Oki.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Debbie and Pak William. Yeah, so basically we are exploring different options for hydrogen, and not only the base load, but of course we would like to explore further for the base load. The variable renewable energy is also good. Solar VP, for instance, it's a good options. The costs keep decreasing, but we need space. Yeah, we need to have it either floating solar PV, or we have it outside Java Island. Yeah, and for the base load, now we have the 672 megawatt in Pertamina geothermal, and we are expanding. We expect to we are developing now some projects in which that we can have more geothermal. And for this hydropower, basically, this is very interesting, as this is base load to produce green electricity. Then this green electricity will be utilized for water electrolysis, and then the hydrogen will be produced. Yeah, then the transportation can be in the form of ammonia or in form of MCH, methyl cyclohexane. The problem is the cost of hydrogen, green hydrogen, is still above $6 per kilogram. So this is rather high for Indonesian market. But we are trying to have a captive market in Indonesia, in which that we are also utilizing hydrogen for chemical productions. Beyond that, we are planning to export it to established market like Japan. So at this moment, we are still exploring the collaboration with other parties. One of the potential parties is basically Japanese companies. Yeah, this is in line with our market, in which that the Japanese is trying to increase the hydrogen mixture in Japan. The production capacity is still under progress, which depend on the location of the hydropower and also the cost of electrolyzer, and then how can we approach the market, which most probably Japan market. Thank you, Bu Debbie and Mas William.
Thank you so much, Pauki, for the answers. It's clear and directly answers the questions, I believe, for all the steps that's what Pertamina been trying to gain objective and reach the study and research starts yet been mentioned and briefly described by Pauki, and then hopefully that could answer Pak William questions about the previous questions, since we knew that there are progress and steps that we need to learn from the every phase. So probably if Pauki wants to add more, but indeed that what we have now from the Pertamina point of view, we are now in the early phase. So this is what we are going to have as a part of the learning curve to move towards to the next phase prior to the implementations. So thank you, Pauki. Thank you for all the three speakers. And then I'd like there are actually thoughts from the chat box actually. And then this one I would like, and also some questions from the committee as well. This the one for there are some cases that been put in a slide. And to analog with what we have in Indonesia from Pak Martin's point of view, this one is from Ibu Ayu actually. Ibu Ayu is putting a statement, it's a thought from Bu Ayu. It's quite difficult to apply CCS and CCUS in Indonesia. Since there are still some homework that must be completed. So if we may, for asking your point of view, Pak Martin, Bu Ayu is mentioning about how the homework, because the questions are asking about inequality of the project of the CCS and CCUS. At the same time, there are some electricity distributions in remote areas. We knew that when you were having this project that you have in Northern Lights, probably Indonesia is a developing country. There are some areas that we have not yet any electricity distributions yet in some rural areas. And then when you mentioned about the CCS and then CCUS project, you mentioned before that in some areas that we have, the storage area probably is a remote area, in which when we were storing that one, either for CCS and CCUS, there are some technology that needs to be delivered to those areas that would need as well some opening the rural areas in oil and gas onshore, either onshore or offshores, that not yet having the distributions of electricity. When you're either the transportations you need, either from the pipeline or from the shipping, what needs to come first in these things? Since both of them, when you are transporting the CCS and CCUS in the rural areas, in this case, electricity or CCS or CCUS for carbon emissions reductions would play at the different POV. So in your point of view, specific in an onshore case, how would this be? How would this be needs to come first? Since we knew that lowering the net zero emissions is an important thing to do, but sometimes in a remote area, electricity will be as well the agenda that we need to address as well. I think that's the questions. You can answer this in a very short or based on your previous experience, Pak Martin. Thank you, Pak Martin.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Ayu. So the way I think about this is that I agree that both these two things are very important, and you shouldn't neglect one of them. But I also don't think that these two, shall I say, project type compete against each other necessarily, and I think it's possible to do both. And what we see for CCUS projects is that they are typically privately funded, and they are kind of funded through or carbon credits. So, for instance, in the EU right now, the carbon price is around $83–84 per ton, and that is around the cost of developing CCUS with the current technologies, and that price is only expected to increase in the future. So in this well-developed carbon market, you have private investors that are investing in these CCUS facilities because they can make a profit from selling the carbon credits at a higher price than what they can what it costs to develop the CCS developments. And I think we can think of the same way as for Indonesia, and I think CCS is really one of the kind of technologies that are needed for the energy transition and to reach net zero. And we need to develop CCUS in the regions and in the areas that are mostly suited for that. And as I showed earlier, I think Indonesia is one of the countries that are well positioned to take advantage of CCUS. And then we just need to make sure that there are mechanisms that makes it possible to invest for private entities to invest in this and make money from it. And if that happens, I don't necessarily think that CCUS has to compete for the same resources and investments with electricity generation or development of transmission grid for electricity in rural areas. So I agree, both two are very important, but I think it's possible to develop both of them simultaneously also.
Thank you, Pak Martin. Yes, agree with that. Both of those needs to be prioritized, but indeed, case by case, needs to be which one needs to be done first, and then followed by the others. So we have the questions. Actually, this made for all the speakers. I'd like to answer this. I like to ask this and then be answered by the speakers. If the speakers don't mind, I'd like to have it. The answer start from Pak Juniarto and then continuing by Pak Konti and then continuing by Pak Oki and then last from Pak Martin. There are two questions that needs to be answered by the honorable speakers. This is the questions from Pak Rahmadani Trias. So I'd like to jump into the second question from Pak Rahmadani is about Indonesia now has a target to leave a middle income trap. one way to achieve this middle income trap is by boosting the economical, by maximizing productivity. Specifically mentioned here is from the oil and gas. We knew that by increasing the productivity from the fossil fuel, it will increase the greenhouse gas emissions, and then the transitions to using the renewable energy source, that there will be a peak in emissions and then decreasing. So wait, I need to put it a bit down. So if Indonesia having this as a objective, increasing the productivity, so could this lead to a slowdown in the carbon reductions timeline, which cause the net zero emissions that objectively committed by Indonesia by 2060 is not achieved, since we knew that in other way the economical of the country been gained or generated by the oil and gas productivity from the fossil fuel. But would this lead to a slowdown as an impact of that with the timeline as well? So the questions could be narrower into if this happens, will this lead to the objective of the timeline could not be achieved, since Indonesia has been committed to that part. Actually, that's why I'd like to have the first answers from Pak Juniarto from the point of view from the regulators. Hopefully can have some insight from all of us here and also the attendees that asking these questions. Pak Juniarto, we'd like to have your answers and hopefully you can answer, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Debbie. Thank you, Bu Ramadhani.
Yes, Bu Rahmadani.
Bu Rahmadani. Yeah. Okay. For the first, this is not question, yeah. This is suggestion. Okay.
This is suggestion. Questions,
yeah,
and ask questions and asking some thoughts. Actually, Pak Juni.
Okay. Number one is not a question, maybe that is suggestion.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm asking the second one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for Bu Ramadhani to bring this concern to us that this should be presented to Bappenas. We will note it, your suggestion. And for the second question, what can I get here is your concern because we are now going to not zero emission. In another hand, we try to increase the oil and gas production, yeah, because we are now in a transition period and we still have a resource of oil and gas, and we keen to utilize it, to use it for our economic growth, yeah, to mitigate the emission that can be emitted by the utilization of the fossil fuel. One of the alternative that considered as low-hanging fruit, yeah, is the implementation of CCS and CCUS. So in one side, we will utilize the fossil fuel. In another side, we will mitigate the emission by implementing CCS and CCUS. So the net emission hopefully can be zero. Okay, and for the third question, what is the alternative if the CCS and CCUS doesn't reach the target? Because there are still many challenges in Indonesia. Okay, CCS and CCUS is one of our attempt, yeah, to mitigate the emission of greenhouse gas, yeah. But if it fail, yeah, maybe we can figure out another alternative, yeah, such utilization of flare gas, for instance, yeah. And maybe that is my answer for question number 3, Bu Debbie.
Okay.
Return to you.
Thank you, Pak Juni. Yes. Thank you for addressing the questions directly from the second and the third one. So we knew that probably the speakers will have another meeting to join. So I would like apologize, Pak Conti, Pak Martin. I would like to address this directly to Pak Oki, and then after that, back to you, Pak Conti, Pak Martin. So Pak Oki, if you, in your point of view, on behalf of these oil and gas companies, national oil and gas companies, for the second questions that what do you think about the questions, and then probably you may jump to the third one actually, and then about the cold distillate to slow down. So the time for you for answering, I would like to give it to you, Pauki. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Debbie. So basically, I would like to try to answer the first questions related to the middle income trap. Yeah. So this middle income trap is basically happen for developing countries, which is trying to improve the wealth. Yeah. From, let's say, $5,000 per capita to 12,000 or above $12,000 per capita. Yeah. For this, we need to improve the utilization of the molecules that we have. It's basically improving our downstream, in which that every molecule that we produce from the upstream business should be utilized and converted to highly value products. This is basically crucial in order to reach that number, yeah, above $12,000 per capita. And for this, the innovation and downstream is important. And why there is potential of not reaching the certain GDP per capita is basically due to the increasing costs. Yeah. And if we relate it to these questions and the oil and gas, yeah, indeed, in decarbonization, we should put priority for the cheapest solutions. Yeah. So basically, we can learn the typical marginal abatement cost curve, MACC. Yeah. What is the solutions that we can have for decarbonization with the cheapest price? Yeah. This will help us to be competitive. Yeah. In terms of costs, in terms of dollar per ton CO2. Yeah. So this is basically the potential answer from my side. And then basically the chance of the second question is indeed the CCS and CCUS is basically high capital costs and also high technology, right? We have read the implementation of CCS and CCUS in different part of the world. Yeah, not all of them are successful. So there is, of course, limitations in which that we need to be prepared. That's why in the study that we have, we need to be very thorough and then critical in order to prevent the potential failure in the implementation. I think those are the two comments from my side, Bu Debbie, Bapak dan Ibu.
Thank you, Pak Oki. Yeah. that's the questions that from the point of view, it's enlightening us. It still relate with what Pak Juniarto mentions before, that low hanging fruit. Then it means start from prioritizing from the decarbonizations and match that into what the downstreams being part as well to the upstreams. That's one of the great idea to be implemented. So the next one I would like to have also thoughts from Pak Conti. Pak Conti, for the two questions that been asking by our audience, I'd like for you to give your thoughts on this one. Please, Pak Conti.
Thank you very much, Bu Debbie. So I think it's an important and challenging question for Indonesia. I guess the thought here is that, can we focus purely on economic growth for now, and then after that later on we switch to sort of greener type of growth or more sustainable type of growth, which in a way is actually what a lot of developed countries have actually had the luxury to do, right, for the past maybe 30-40 years is grow. And then over the past 10 years, there's been a huge wave, or actually in the past 2 years alone, a huge wave or focus on green and more sustainable growth. And so it is a challenge indeed for Indonesia to manage. And the reality is that Indonesia is today the 17th largest GDP. And we think that Indonesia should be a top 10 economy over the next 10 years or so, which would probably require its GDP to grow maybe by 50 to 70%. And that needs to continue. I think that the point though is that, how do we achieve 50 to 70% GDP uplift in the next 10 years, but at the same time be able to reduce the intensity of energy and emissions, right? As opposed to trying to slow down the growth for the sake of green alone. And so if you say that, it's a given that we must grow in order to, escape the middle income trap, but, we now need to reduce the intensity. I do think that there are actually interesting opportunities that we have here. A few thoughts here. One, I do think that the subsidy mechanism that is, in Indonesia today is perhaps not the most productive, or not the most targeted. And there's probably a need to reform the subsidy mechanism. So that you really target the lowest income people, as opposed to providing oil subsidy to people who are driving Mercedes, for example, on the road, right? So that is one aspect of being more targeted in the subsidy mechanism to protect the lowest income households, and therefore maybe there will be a saving to the APBN. Now, the second thing is how to then also unlock some of the natural resources of Indonesia that are actually in line with the green trends. Like, for example, the nature-based solutions that Pak Oki talked about. We have some of the lowest cost carbon sinks in the world. Now, we could actually turn that into an economic opportunity which creates jobs, is good for the environment, but at the same time contributes to economic prosperity for this country. So if we can turn that into a real business, it actually lifts the GDP of this country. If we can do, nature-based solutions at $10, say, per ton of cost, but be able to sell it at $50 per ton, right? Given, of course, some domestic market obligations that we need to fulfill as well. So I think that will be a great opportunity. Third, I mentioned nickel, and the resource, the nickel value chain that we can actually develop is another big source. I mean, we can actually be the world's largest nickel producer, but not just because we want to create nickel sulfate to export it, but we want to go all the way down into the battery value chain and create maybe even a global battery ecosystem or battery business that would actually increase the GDP of Indonesia and add more value. And number four, another interesting market will be electric vehicles that will actually also contribute to GDP growth. Right, both for two-wheelers, we have 100 million two-wheelers here in Indonesia. How do we actually make sure that we can actually get the uplift in value by creating a two-wheeler manufacturing hub and eventually a four-wheeler manufacturing hub, right, for electric vehicles, not just for Indonesia, but for the region, so that we become a net exporter. We become what Thailand used to be as the Southeast Asia sort of hub for manufacturing vehicles. We can actually build that. So those are some of the interesting opportunities. So I think it can go hand in hand to actually create economic prosperity from the green economy, while at the same time ensuring we still ensure that we keep growing.
Thank you, Pak Conti. Yeah. That's great idea. As you mentioned as well at your very first questions that have been asked, and then it's emphasizing more in the sessions of the Q&A sessions. So since apologize for the next questions, I'd like to deliver this into our operational and technical perspective from the restart. It's about the next questions that have been answered as well by Pak Juni and Pak Oki, but I'd like to hear it from you for what is the alternative if the CCS and CCUS doesn't reach the target in Indonesia specifically, because there are still many challenges in Indonesia, as you know that from your slide that here in Indonesia we don't have that nice flow line that could be used for the CO2. If you mentioned that transportations either with shipping or the pipeline, we don't have any of them yet for now. And we knew that if the CCS and CCUS needs to be implemented, those parameters, if you want to make it flooding, that needs to be installed or to be counted as a expense, capital expense, as part of the transportations, other than the area, the storage, and other than that, something that let's think that we already have one area, but we don't have any other of that. So what do you think, Martin, in a perspective of your opportunities and challenges specifically for Indonesia? We hope that you can answer this, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So the way that we think about decarbonization is that there are three key pillars. One is CCS, and the two others being renewables and hydrogen. So if you then take out CCS as not an option, then you're left with renewables and hydrogen. And for hydrogen, as most of you are probably aware, there are mainly two types that can help us decarbonize the value chain. One is the blue type that is dependent on fossil fuels combined with CCUS, and then you have the green hydrogen, which is based on producing hydrogen from renewables and through electrolysis. So if CCUS doesn't work, then you're then left with green hydrogen and renewables as the two levers that you can pull to help you in decarbonizing the country. I think there are opportunities within both those sectors for Indonesia, but since also green hydrogen is highly dependent on renewables, that's kind of the main thing that you need to make work if you can't rely on CCUS. And then also agree with some of the things that Pak Kunti mentioned earlier, that you're also dependent on electrification of several sectors to decarbonize them. And there the mobility sector or the transportation sector is really important, where if you build out the renewable capacity, then that can be combined with electrical vehicles to drive down emissions. And also as a kind of side comment, I think there's going to be very difficult to reach net zero unless you get CCS to work, and also if you don't get direct air capture to work. I think you will be dependent on that, because there will, in the end of the day, there will be some CO2 emissions that aren't captured through industrial facilities and so on, and those have to be offset by either nature-based solutions or direct air capture. So yeah, maybe that's also one thing that I didn't really mention earlier. That's nature-based solutions or offsets, such as tree planting and forestation and so on. But that's
That's right. Yeah. If in the case that CCS and CCUS, but we are still expecting that will to work, Pak Martin, since we are starting that, and other than that, we knew that we'll start it from the study at least, and we knew that the progress that you've been mentioned, that 13 years, we are still at the very phase, at the very beginning phase that we need to go through first as well. Yeah, thank you, Pak Martin, for the answers and also the thoughts for the questions, and also from all the speakers that we are having now. Apologize that Pak Oki privately mentions to the committee that probably in a dual meeting, but he's back now. So we are at the very end of the Q&A sessions right now, since we are going to move to the FGD closing. But before that, I would like to say much appreciate, thank you, and so much honored for me actually for being here as a part of this discussion sessions with all the honorable speakers, starting from Pak Juniarto, from Pak Conti, from Pak Oki Muraza, from Pak Martin. We are now in the phase for having the conclusions, remarks from our FGD. This slide being compiled from all of our discussions that we made, from all the questions and answers as well. It was preparing from our committee. Mas Axel, if you may to show our conclusions presentations as our last sessions of this FGD before I hand it over to Pak Erwin Syah.
Okay, let's wait.
This is actually the quick one, or a quick one as a wrap actually for our sessions. The facts of our discussions mentions that indeed from the energy sector, Indonesia is having the contributions emissions is around 34%. And we have that's from Pak Juniarto, and also the second bullet is from Pak Conti, that Indonesia indeed is the 8th largest polluter, but at the same time also we have the lowest LCS that we luckily have the Borneo forest in this time. So Indonesia matters, globalizations and energy transition plays critical roles, measuring in the CCUS, hydrogen, geothermal, and mini LNG as the opportunities to put as a part to be players in the decarbonization roadmap. So specifically in the CCUS, this is a new paradigm to combat the climate change that emerged currently. And then from the point of view of the national, as an oil company, Pertamina indeed has the commitment in reducing the emissions as well. Investations being made by Pertamina for the NRE, and also doing research and all the study ongoing for the geothermal, hydrogen, and then also the electric vehicles and all the others study that being part or becoming one of the initiatives or several initiatives for the decarbonizations. That's the facts. So the next slide, the challenges. Indeed, we are having challenges towards how to be these projects being implemented for the next several years. One is the regulation. And then also the Indonesian energy players have to invest adjacent to the green business. And then another step out business needs to have synergy and collaborations, especially in the CCUS, we might need to talk about high capital that needs to be invested over here. And then as part of those CCUS, CCS being implemented, parameters that needs to be thinking at the very first as well is also how the capturing process, how the transportation process, and how the mechanism to store that in the Pertamina field is still under the study projects, or how this needs to be started compared to what the other country been developing into. Indonesia's with Pertamina as part of the CCUS study, we are still at the very beginning phase. But indeed, it's still ongoing. A small step, one step in ahead, and then at the very end, it could be a big leap to have this net zero emissions for Indonesia and also the world. So the last slide would be the way forward, I believe, Mas Axel. Yes, the way forward, as we mentioned at the very beginning by Pak Juniarto, upstream oil and gas companies needs to start performing activity procedures to lowering the carbon emissions. The CCS and CCUS could be one of the initiatives that could be play on this case, and then also the upstream oil and gas companies needs to have an investments to be more prioritized in a high potential value green business. The third one, the step out business in transportations. If we want to play specifically in CCS and CCUS, needs to be thinking start from now, since any CCS and CCUS will need the CO2 emitter as well. So again, the fourth and the fifth way forward would focusing in the studies. Studies would also need collaborations and synergy between government, consultancy, technical consultancy company that having lots of experience in this case. That's why it required as well the partnership either between the oil and gas company or with governments as the regulators in here, and as well this could be another agenda or another initiatives to achieve in 2060s reducing emissions commitment from Indonesia. I think that's the last slide from these sessions, FGD. Again, I would like to say thank you for all the speakers, and then I would like to give it back the time and also the sessions to our chairman, Pak Erwin Syah Putra. Thank you, speakers, and the time is yours, Pak Erwin Syah. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we are going to give a moment, right, Debbie?
Yes, Pak Erwin, actually, after I hand it over to you, it's time for us, you as on behalf of IATMIS, to give the memento and having the photo sessions with the speakers.
Okay, thank you.
So the first memento, in this case, for the before closing sessions to the main FGD, Mas Axel, should we put it one by one first, right, Mas Axel? If I may need to help here.
Yes.
So the first memento, it's actually from Pak Erwin Syah on behalf of IATMI to Pak Juniarto.
Pak Erwin to Pak Juniarto, operator, sorry.
Pak operator,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we make it larger. Can you see? Okay, on behalf of IATMI and the chairperson of the FGD4, thank you for your time and your presentation.
You can have like before we taking
Thank
the
you,
photo sessions, you can
Mr.
have
Erwin.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Erwin Syah. Thank you, Pak Juniarto.
You're
So
welcome.
the second photo sessions and giving the memento, we'd like to have Pak Erwin Syah and Pak Conti for having these sessions.
Okay. On behalf of IADMI, thank you, Pak Conti, for your presentations and your insight to this meeting. Thank you.
And we would like to have the photo sessions. And 1 and 2 and Pak Erwin, thumbs up first.
All right.
1 and 3. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Erwin. Thank you, Pak Conti. So the next memento and photo sessions, we'd like to get here also Pak Martin Obdal from Restart Energy. Yes, thank you, Pak Restart. Pak Erwin, silakan.
Okay, on behalf of IADMI, thank you, Pak Martin Abdal, for your presentations.
Thumbs up, and then the photo session, and 1 and 2 and 3. Thank you, Pak Erwin. Thank you, Pak Martin. So the last photo sessions and memento for these sessions, we'd like to have Oki Muraza as our fourth speaker, and Pak Erwin.
Okay, on behalf of IADMI, thank you for your sharing your knowledge and insight to us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Erwin.
Photo session start, and 1 and 2 and 3. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pak Erwin. Thank you, Pak Oki. So, Mas Asel, do we have the FGD chairman with all the fourth speaker also the photo sessions?
Oke, can we do? Bisa kan ya, Mas Operator, untuk halaman yang FGD Chairman nomor 4 ini, yang difotokan, sorry, Operator. Ya. Oke, mungkin sama
Pak Erwin, fotonya
Pak
Erwin bukan?
Fotonya Pak Erwin yang besarnya. Ya. Ya. Halo, Operator.
Erwin, Operator.
Untuk Bu Dewinya diganti Pak Erwin. Bisa, Operator? Mungkin sebentar ya.
Maybe that's fine.
Oke, mungkin Pak Erwinnya di pin dulu. Halo, Operator. Let's spotlight. Oke.
Okay. Okay. So this photo sessions will have this it's gonna be our memento memory as well for our sessions. So the pictures would like to give from all of us, from Pak Erwin and all the speakers. Time's up, and photo start, and 1 and 2 and 3. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pak Erwin, and thank you for all the speakers for the session. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Terima kasih, Bapak dan Ibu.
Pak Erwin, if you have something to have like a closing sessions or closing statements, and probably for the attendees here and also the speakers, if you want to return back to the main FGD.
Okay. Baik. The main FGD link is on the chat box ya.
Okay. Once again, on behalf of IADMI, I would like to express my sincerely appreciations to all the speaker and also for attendance and also for moderators and all the support teams to make it this conference successful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. Thank you Pak Erwin. Thank you Mas Axel. Thank you Pak Juniarto, Pak Konti, Pak Oki, Pak Martin.
Terima kasih
Thank
semua.
you. Terima
Sama-sama.
kasih.